Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Nazca Mummies, elongated skulls, three-fingered hands, and impossible DNA. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 2017, a team of researchers in Peru announced the discovery of mummified bodies near Nazca with elongated skulls, three-fingered hands, and DNA that allegedly contained genetic sequences unknown to science. For weeks, the claim circulated globally: a new species, possibly of extraterrestrial origin. Documentaries were produced. Press conferences were held. Millions of people encountered the story before the scientific community responded. When independent forensic scientists and Peruvian government archaeologists examined the evidence, they found something more disturbing than extraterrestrials. They found genuine pre-Columbian mummies, real ancient human remains from protected Peruvian archaeological sites that had been exhumed illegally, physically modified with added fingers and altered proportions, coated in white powder to alter their appearance, and presented to the world as non-human entities. The people behind the presentation had taken cultural patrimony protected by Peruvian law, desecrated it, and sold access to international media. The Nazca mummy case is not a story about aliens. It is a story about what happens when pseudoscience, financial incentive, and a willing media ecosystem encounter genuine archaeological sites. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the global puzzle of unexplained ancient construction, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Archaeology is, by its nature, an incomplete science. We find only what survives, and what survives is determined not by importance, but by durability. Stone lasts, wood rots, metal corrodes, ceramics endure. The written word survives only if it is inscribed on stone or baked clay. Papyrus and vellum are hostages to humidity and fire. This means that every picture of the past, assembled from archaeological evidence, is a distortion, biased toward the materials that happen to last, rather than the activities that define the culture. With that caveat in place, the structures that do survive from the ancient world are sometimes inexplicable by any conventional model of the societies that built them. Fine stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons, fitted together with tolerances measured in millimeters, transported from quarries dozens of kilometers away, and raised to heights that challenge modern cranes. We find astronomical alignments so precise that they track the movements of specific stars over periods of thousands of years. We find architectural proportions that embed mathematical ratios, pi, phi, the Pythagorean theorem, in civilizations that supposedly had no formal mathematics. The challenge these structures pose is not engineering alone. It is conceptual. How did people without our tools conceive of projects on this scale? How did they solve the organizational problems of feeding and coordinating tens of thousands of workers over decades? How did they transmit technical knowledge across generations without standardized notation? The buildings stand as proof that they did it. The question of how remains genuinely open. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns, in science, demand explanation. With that foundation in place, Let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Nazca Mummies, elongated skulls, three-fingered hands, and impassable DNA is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The mummies were first publicly presented in 2017 by James Mawson, a Mexican television journalist who has presented numerous alien-related claims over several decades, and a team of researchers operating under the Inc. Ari Institute in Cusco, Peru. The presentation included X-rays, DNA sampling claims, and carbon dating. The bodies were given names. The largest was called Maria, and the team invited journalists and independent researchers to examine them. Several researchers accepted the invitation and later published critiques. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen. Instruments malfunction. Researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the bodies were characterized by 3 elongated fingers on each hand, elongated skulls, and an overall proportional structure described as non-human. X-ray imaging was presented showing internal organ structures and bone formations. The presenting team claimed DNA analysis had returned results containing genetic sequences not matching any known species. The specific laboratory that conducted the DNA testing was not publicly identified, and the raw sequencing data was not released for independent verification. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The Peruvian Ministry of Culture declared the bodies stolen cultural artifacts and demanded their return. Luis Jaime Castillo, a Peruvian archaeologist and former vice minister, stated publicly that the mummies originated from genuine pre-Columbian burial sites and had been illegally exhumed. The ministry opened a criminal investigation into the trafficking of cultural patrimony. Peru's laws on pre-Columbian artifacts classify unauthorized removal as a criminal offense. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, American researcher L.A. Marzulli, who was initially sympathetic to the alien hypothesis, commissioned independent carbon dating of samples from the mummies. The results returned widely inconsistent dates ranging from 245 to 1797 AD across different samples from what were presented as single bodies. Consistent dating from a genuine mummy of a single individual would be expected to cluster within a narrow range. The inconsistency is consistent with assembled composites made from remains of different ages. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of elongated skulls are a genuine and well-documented feature of the Paracas culture of coastal Peru, dating from approximately 800 BC to 100 BC. The Paracas practiced cranial binding, wrapping infants' heads to produce elongated skull shapes associated with social status. Hundreds of authentic Paracas elongated skulls exist in Peruvian museum collections and are studied by archaeologists. The elongation is achieved by external pressure during infancy and does not alter the number of cranial plates. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. In September 2023, Mawson presented what he described as non-human mummified bodies to the Mexican Congress during a public hearing on UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. The bodies he presented closely resembled the Nazca Mummies from 2017. The presentation was immediately denounced by the scientific community and the Peruvian government, which reiterated its position that the bodies were looted Peruvian cultural patrimony. Mexican scientists who subsequently examined the bodies confirmed they were human remains that had been assembled and modified. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Nazca Mummies, elongated skulls, three-fingered hands, and impossible DNA. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Mawson's extraterrestrial hypothesis holds that the bodies represent a non-human species of unknown origin, potentially extraterrestrial, with physiological features, 3 fingers, elongated skulls, anomalous DNA that cannot be explained by human anatomy or known archaeological modification practices. No peer-reviewed paper has been published supporting this claim. The DNA data claimed to show unknown sequences has not been released for independent verification. Every independent scientific body that has examined the claim has rejected it. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence. But it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the forensic fraud hypothesis, supported by Peruvian government archaeologists and independent forensic scientists, holds that the bodies are genuine pre-Columbian human mummies that were illegally exhumed from protected Peruvian archaeological sites, then physically modified, fingers added from animal or human remains, proportions altered to create the appearance of non-human entities for commercial exploitation. The inconsistent carbon dating and visible construction of the 3-fingered hands in X-rays are cited as primary evidence for this explanation. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that David Halperin of the University of Wisconsin and other scholars analyzing X-ray images found that the bone structure of the 3-fingered hands showed human child bones rearranged and supplemented with additional material to produce the unusual finger count. The bodies as presented appear to be composites of genuine ancient human remains modified post-mortem. This is consistent with the Peruvian government's trafficking investigation and with the wildly inconsistent carbon dating results from supposedly single individuals. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers working from the same body of evidence reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Nazca Mummies, elongated skulls, three-fingered hands, and impossible DNA does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes independent carbon dating commissioned by L.A. Marzali produced dates ranging from 245 to 1797 AD from samples attributed to single bodies. A genuine mummy from a single individual would produce dates clustering within decades. The date range of over 500 years across samples from one body is consistent with composite assembly from remains of different ages and origins. This result was obtained by a researcher initially sympathetic to the alien hypothesis and published by him as problematic for the extraterrestrial interpretation. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented forensic X-ray analysis by multiple researchers identified human child bones in the three-fingered hands, rearranged to produce the appearance of three long fingers. David Halperin's published analysis described the bone configuration as inconsistent with a naturally occurring three-fingered anatomy and consistent with post-mortem manipulation of human skeletal material. The white coating applied to the bodies was identified as a substance applied to conceal the modifications and to simulate the appearance of a uniform preserved surface. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed. The Peruvian Ministry of Culture's formal investigation confirmed that the mummies originated from genuine pre-Columbian Peruvian archaeological sites and were removed in violation of Peruvian cultural patrimony law. Luis Jaime Castillo and colleagues at the ministry publicly identified the type of site the remains originated from and the approximate region. The Paracas culture's genuine elongated skulls are authentic and archaeologically significant without modification, making the fraudulent additions to these mummies an unnecessary desecration of genuine cultural heritage. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Nazca Mummies, elongated skulls, three-fingered hands, and impassable DNA. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Peruvian government's investigation confirmed the mummies as looted and modified cultural artifacts. Mawson's 2023 Mexican Congress presentation renewed global coverage and was rapidly denounced by the scientific community, the Peruvian government, and Mexican researchers who subsequently examined the bodies. The Paracas culture's genuine elongated skulls remain archaeologically important and are housed in Peruvian museum collections. Their authentic strangeness requires no embellishment. The Nazca mummy case has become a standard reference point in discussions of pseudo-archaeological fraud, the exploitation of genuine archaeological sites, and the media ecosystems that amplify extraordinary claims before independent scientific scrutiny can occur. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Nazca Mummies, elongated skulls, three-fingered hands, and impassable DNA from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Nazca Mummies ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.